You know, words have incredible power. They can define us, they can empower us, or they can really, really wound us. And when we're talking about something as personal as how our brain works, the labels we use for dyslexia matter a lot. So today, we're going to dive into some fascinating new research that asks a simple question. What do these labels really mean to the people who actually live with them?
To really get the real-world impact of this, just take in this quote from a participant in a recent Australian study. This isn't some abstract idea, right? This is the painful, lived reality of being mislabeled. These are words used as weapons, and they can follow a person from the classroom straight into their career.
And that experience? It brings us to the big question behind this new research from Wissell and her colleagues. I mean, beyond the obvious sting of insults, what do all the other labels, the clinical ones, the well-meaning ones, what do they actually mean to the adults who are navigating the world with dyslexia every single day?
Okay, so the very first thing the research uncovered is that dyslexic adults are basically navigating what you can only call a storm of labels. They're getting hit from all sides, with confusing medical jargon on one and just deeply painful insults on the other.
From the time they're kids, they're just bombarded with this whole mix of clinical terms, and the thing is, the language is wildly inconsistent. It can change from country to country, state to state, even from one school to the next. You can imagine how confusing that must be.
And then you layer on top of all that clinical confusion, this painful collection of ableist terms that people in the study said they'd heard all their lives. The researchers called it a toxic label soup, and they found it has this profound negative impact that leads to feelings of humiliation, shame, and just total disrespect.
This brings us to probably one of the most loaded words of all. And what the research shows is a huge point of tension for so many people, the word disability. And this is where it gets really complicated. There's this deep internal conflict. On one hand, that disability label, it's a legal key. It's the thing that unlocks crucial support, both in school and at work. It validates that the struggle is real. But on the other hand, so many participants said they just hated the word. They don't see the problem as being something inside them, but in a world that just isn't built for the way they think.
I mean, this quote from one person just gets right to the heart of that tension, doesn't it? It's that feeling of being caught between a legal reality and your own personal identity. You need the label to get help, but you totally reject what it feels like it's saying about you as a person.
And this next quote really nails another huge idea. For so many people, that feeling of being disabled, it doesn't actually come from their own brain wiring. It comes from trying to make your way through a world, a school, an office that just wasn't designed for you. The problem isn't the person, it's the environment.
All right, so if disability is a super complicated label, what about the complete opposite? Because lately there's this new, much more positive idea floating around. This idea of dyslexia as a superpower. But as the research shows, that term is just as loaded.
So the researchers just flat out asked dyslexic adults, is dyslexia a superpower? And the answer was a pretty clear no. Out of 14 people, 10 of them rejected the label completely. The other 4 were a bit hesitant, saying, you know, maybe it's true for some people, but it wasn't for them.
And what this shows is this huge disconnect in how people see this. Adults with dyslexia tend to view their strengths, things like creativity or problem solving, as coping skills they had to develop out of sheer necessity. But employers, they're way more likely to frame those exact same traits as superpowers. And that really tells you a lot about the power dynamic of who gets to define the experience.
This participant just says it perfectly. The creativity isn't some kind of magical gift from dyslexia. It's a hard-won skill that was developed because of the challenges of dyslexia. It's a workaround, not a built-in feature. And that difference is so important for understanding their experience because it reframes superpower as what it really is, a survival skill.
Okay, so we've got all this confusion, all this disagreement over labels like disability and superpower. Where do we go from here? Well, the research points to one really clear answer. We have to center the dyslexic voice. And one of the most important findings was a shift in language. For years, the standard was what we call person-first language, saying a person with dyslexia. But this research shows a growing preference for identity-first language, saying I am a dyslexic person. And that is a powerful, powerful shift. It reframes dyslexia from something a person has to a core part of who they are.
So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway here? It's simple, but it's also incredibly profound. The words we choose have real power. They shape identity, self-worth, even opportunity.
And the most respectful, the most accurate, and the most empowering labels are going to be the ones that are chosen and guided by the people who actually live these experiences.
And this really all boils down to a powerful principle from the wider disability advocacy community, and this research shows it's absolutely crucial here too. Nothing about us without us. It just means that when we talk about dyslexia, the most important voices in the room have to be the dyslexic ones. Period.
We've seen just how deeply a label can affect someone's life, all the way from the classroom to the boardroom. So I guess the question to leave you with is this. Since we know the words we choose literally create a reality for other people, are we making the effort to choose the right ones?